Welcome back to Software Without Borders. I'm Tomas Hilliard, Director of Strategy and Consulting at Accelerance.
And I'm Olivier Poulard, Managing Director of Software Strategy at Accelerance. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Jack Teitel, a prominent AI ML specialist with over a decade of experience, currently the founder of Tidal AI.
Awesome to have you, Jack. So Jack's experience spans the full AI lifecycle from computer vision to healthcare AI and large language models, always with a strong focus on delivering measurable business value. Jack, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks, y'all. It's great to be here.
So Jack, your career is quite impressive, moving from lead data scientist roles in healthcare to senior ML scientist to even founding your own AI solutions company. I'm curious what initially drew you to the dynamic world of AI and machine learning, and how has your perspective on driving AI innovation evolved throughout these varied roles?
Yeah, totally. So I kind of tripped and fell into AI actually. When I was in college studying, computer science and math, I got a little grant from the university for a summer project. And I had planned to do just some sort of project on robotics, not really related to AI, but I needed a professor to sign off on any money that I was going to get from this grant to pay myself. So I had just taken AI the semester before, and the professor, Dr. Henry Kautz, seemed very, easygoing, is a good way to put it. And I did pretty well in his class, so I figured I'd ask him, shoot an email, say, hey, could you be my advisor for this, sign off on my work? He says, yeah, of course, come into the office in a couple weeks and we can work out the details. A couple weeks go by, go into his office, and he just starts telling me about this AI lab that he runs, doing all sort of cool work on social media analysis and public health efforts, and really some very interesting stuff. This would be some very, very early NLP. This is maybe 12 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, something like that. And so I was, obviously asking questions and pretty interested. It was some cool stuff. And all of a sudden, he just offers me a job on the spot. He's like, so, okay, when can you start? And I say, all right, I'll start tomorrow. And so I accidentally got a job in this AI lab, and it just fascinated me. I worked there for the summer and found that I was pretty good at the work and found it very interesting. And the stuff we were doing was having a really major impact. So I stuck with that lab all throughout college and continued to work in AI after that. In terms of my perspective changing on AI throughout my career in industry working as an AI scientist, it really hasn't changed that much. AI itself has developed a lot, and the use cases for it have changed a lot. But I've seen that AI is really the most powerful when it is targeted to a specific task and built in a way to assist humans at their job and make them better, rather than doing full automation. And this was true 10 years ago, and I believe it's still true today. So while there's a lot of value and excitement about AI fully automating workflows, having that human element to help prevent the automation from breaking down over time and give that extra insight and that extra leg up over the automation, which anybody can do. It gives you like a big advantage, even still today.
I know that you've been involved with healthcare AI solutions and that kind of stuff. Tell us more about it, because that could make a major impact on humanity, I think. So.
Yeah, my work in healthcare. So I led the data science team for a kind of an internal AI consulting group within a hospital network in upstate New York. And we worked on really a lot of different projects. I started that group as the only AI scientist. By the time I left, there were several of us. And we worked on everything from segmenting out important parts of medical imaging, think like bones or nerves or different types of tissues, to help improve the ability of physicians to actually read imaging like x-rays, ultrasounds, even contrast enhanced video, things like that. There was also a lot of work that we did around predicting things based on the medical record of the patient. So predicting diagnoses or developing tools to help doctors predict diagnoses, or screens that should say, hey, this patient should go get a test because it's likely they have this disease or something like that. And also just efficiencies work, right? So doing an analysis of data around how doctors interact with the medical record to indicate, real data-backed methods for them to improve and get more efficient and better use their time. So really the applications are so broad. It's very cool.
Hey, Jack, I'm curious because these anecdotes are really interesting, and obviously they're coming from healthcare. I want to know more about how some of your insights built in healthcare can be translated to other industries, regarding how they build and set up their AI and machine learning systems.
Totally. That's a great question. And there's a lot there. So one of the biggest things is data security. Almost every business owner I talk to who wants to build AI is concerned about their data getting exposed. And the reason is a model like ChatGPT has all this knowledge stored in it because it's been trained on, all the data on the internet, give or take. So if you're sending it your proprietary data, maybe it will train on your data, and then your competitors will be able to just ask ChatGPT questions and get your proprietary solutions. So there's a lot of nerves about data privacy right now. In healthcare, that's been a concern for decades, with laws like HIPAA severely restricting how you can access data and how you can use it. And so a lot of lessons around data privacy and security can be derived from the healthcare space. And the end result there is really, you can do it, right? Like we did it in healthcare, where we have HIPAA and all these other regulations. And so there's really no need to be concerned about data privacy as long as you're building tools in a smart way, meaning, not necessarily using these native endpoints like ChatGPT or Anthropic, but rather more privately hosted services like Amazon Bedrock or ChatGPT is built through Azure that actually have the same models, but put them behind a firewall in a more secure environment, or even deploying models locally, things like DeepSeek, which originally from China scares a lot of people, but it's actually an open weight model. You can just download it onto your computer, run it all on your own, completely disconnected from the internet. Your data is not going anywhere. And that model is still very powerful. They actually just released an update either this month or last month to bring it back up to standard with current state-of-the-art models. So lots of ways around data privacy and security can be learned from the medical field. That's probably my biggest takeaway.
You could still, HIPAA is an important regulation, obviously, in the industry, and even if you don't expose your data, you could still expose patient data one way or the other, right? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, be very careful. So a lot of people's first instinct is just say, before you do anything, de-identify the data, save the de-identified data, and only work with that. And that works sometimes. But for a lot of solutions, the identifiable information, things like dates, times, specific rare diseases, all those kind of things can really have an impact on the data analysis and predictions you're trying to make. So by de-identifying the data, you're actually removing a lot of that powerful value from the data. So there's ways to do this, getting HIPAA compliant servers, getting BAAs in place with some of these cloud companies, where you can do this work, but you got to be very careful about what you're doing with the data, what tools you're using, making sure everything stays in a secure environment. It takes a lot of, I always recommend good and consistent training. So, training employees in how to exist in a HIPAA compliant or secure environment, and then not just doing it once, but doing it every 6 months or every year to keep those skills fresh, because it can be easy to forget about some of this stuff when you're in the weeds trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what HITRUST thinks about AI right now. Quite frankly, I don't know, but I'd be curious to hear that if you know anything about what their stance on AI is at HITRUST.
Sorry, got nothing on that one.
It's probably too new to know anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. Plus, this stuff is changing all the time.
All the time, yeah.
All the time. I mean, it used to be the case where if you were using a model from a year or two ago, that would be considered outdated. If it was, 2 or 3 years old, 5 years ago now, that would be an outdated model. But anything within that is considered state of the art. Now, if you use a model that's 6 months old, that's not going to cut it. Even just 6 months of age now can have a really big difference. And there's new tools coming out every day. A perfect example of this is some of these vibe coding tools, to give a popular name to it. Really, they're called AI coding assist tools, where you can just prompt stuff into existence. And I see new versions of these tools coming out every day. Every week or two, I have somebody in my network saying, "Hey, have you checked out this tool? Hey, have you checked out that tool?" And all of these have their own privacy and data restrictions and allowances and compliances, and it can be very tough navigating that world.
Jack, you mentioned data privacy is one big consideration, but also making sure that the technology that you're using is up to modernized standards. I'm curious if there's any other gaps that you've seen organizations potentially overlook that could be consequential in the future.
I think there's one really big area that companies are not putting enough thought into right now when it comes to AI, and that is the use of AI. So, right now, there's a lot of hype around AI in the media, on social media, amongst peers. It used to be the case 5 years ago. I would tell people, "Oh, I work in AI." And the biggest question I'd get is, "Oh, what is AI?" I'd get a bunch of blank stares. Now I say I work in AI, and people say, "Oh, I use ChatGPT too." And so a lot of people are thinking they're experts in AI just by using it once or twice and thinking they know how it works. But really, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of things that can go right, a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of things that AI can do, and a lot of things it can't do. A lot of things that are easy to do, a lot of things that are hard to do. So when I'm talking with businesses, working to scope projects, doing those kind of introductory calls, what I see very often is businesses either have too high of an opinion of AI, they expect it just to be able to do everything very, very easily. Or they have a very low opinion of AI. Oh, I tried putting this thing in ChatGPT and it didn't work, so it probably will never work. So, recognizing your skills as a business owner is really important. You know everything there is to know about your business. You know about your customers. You know about the product market fit of your business that you're trying to match. It's okay to not be an expert in AI. It's okay to bring in somebody who has experience deploying these tools, lives in that ecosystem, and can tell you, "Hey, this is a good idea. This is a bad idea. This is what we can do. This is what we can't do." But more importantly than that, combining those two sets of experiences is really where businesses can shine. Because when you take that kind of core fundamental business logic and combine it with a strong AI understanding, what you get are AI tools that are not just fluff and hype, but rather ones that impact businesses at the core and can provide a immediate and long-term ROI to your business, which I think is really important, really powerful. So I think businesses just need to take a step back from AI. Don't just try and implement the latest tool that you heard about from your buddy just because it has AI in the name or says AI powered in the tagline. Really think about your business, what your workflows look like, what your pain points look like, and then bring someone in who knows about AI, knows which of these are going to be easy to do, hard to do, and can execute on it. So that'd be my thoughts about kind of a gap that I'm seeing right now.
That's really interesting. So not only making sure that you have the right AI technology to serve your business, but also making sure that you have the subject matter experts to come in and create real business value from those tools that you're using. So I'm curious for leaders looking to unlock this business value, maybe share one or two other challenges that you often see once they've already selected this cutting edge AI concept. How do they turn that into a tangible, impactful business result?
So it can be tough. The biggest challenge to me, we just discussed one of the biggest challenges, which is understanding your workflows and how the AI tool is going to fit into your business. Picking the right tool or even designing your own is vital, because an AI tool can work really well and be developed really well and be really user friendly. But if it doesn't fit a need that your business has, if it's not addressing a core pain point, you're not really going to see ROI from it. The other aspect is employee training and awareness of these tools. So I've seen businesses where they've gone through the effort of developing a custom AI product. And we've worked with the leadership team and they're super happy with the result. We're super happy with the result. We validated the tool. It works great. They validated the tool. They're excited about it. We roll it out and we're not seeing any return on investment, right? And we look at the usage of the tool because it's very important to have monitoring once it's in place to see how this tool is working, how people are using it, that kind of stuff. And so other people weren't really using it. And when we dug in, we saw this is because people just didn't know, right? Like people weren't used to interacting with AI models. People didn't know what it was capable of. And that lack of knowledge led to low usage. And I've also seen in a similar vein tools that were designed well, but were hard to use, right? Let's say like a photo editor is going and editing pictures, and we built them an AI tool where they can use, but they have to like save their stuff midway through, exit out of whatever they're doing, load it onto a website, get the stuff from there and pull that back down, put it into their tool. That's a big disruption in their process. So figuring out not just what are high impact items, but how those can easily integrate into existing workflows is really key to AI adoption. So that's kind of what I think. Training and making sure that you integrate into workflows in a way that is natural and actually be useful to employees.
So that's interesting. So there's the business workflow, but there's also people building those business workflows, right? So the engineers, let's say. And I know that you worked on optimizing software development processes, and you're big into automation and technical debt and this type of issues. How do you see AI influencing the future of software engineering, um, especially in the code generation? Of course, I mean it's a big topic out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just influencing the future of software development. It's the present. This stuff is happening right now, and has been happening for the past year or so. So the biggest thing to say in terms of AI and software development are these AI coding assist tools, things like Cursor, Claude Code, Windsurf, all of these tools, Replit, Lovable, Bolt, that allow users to interact with code via natural language. These can be grouped into two main buckets, in my opinion. The first are pure vibe coding tools, where the idea is that the user does not look at the code. They just interact with prompts, and then it pops up a preview of their app, and they can see what it looks like and play around with a synthetic data set. And they're just typing away in natural language, trying to get the app to do what they want. These are tools like Replit, Lovable, Bolt. These can be really powerful because you can build an app very, very quickly. But when you do go look at the code as a developer, it's not very good. There's a lot of security vulnerabilities, deprecated code, weird integrations. It really breaks down when you go and look at it. And what that also means is when you go to scale a product that was developed that way into a full scalable enterprise level product, it's going to be really tough because you're not going to have developers who understand the code base. You're not going to know where to do specific things. You're going to be relying on this natural language interaction to solve all of your problems. And the larger your code base gets, the harder it is for these tools to perform well. That's because of the amount of context that these LLMs are able to process at a single time. So they're great with small tools, but once that gets like a large enterprise app level, it gets really, really hard. So the way I've been using those style of tools is for POC development. When someone comes to me and they have an idea for this tool they want to build, I can, in a day or two, use one of these vibe coding tools and build up a fully functioning app that they can play around with. Think of it as like a clickable wireframe from Figma, but instead of just a wireframe, it's a full app. And this helps cut down on the cycle of feature development. right? Anybody who's done software development knows it takes a long time to agree on features, figure out how you want the app to look, how you want it to work, how all the different pieces fit together. And that can be a long process because, you request a feature, you do a sprint for a week or two, you integrate the feature, you send that back to the user for feedback, they give feedback, you do another sprint. It can take months just to nail down the requirements and the specifications. With these vibe coding tools, that process takes days. You can build an app, send it off to the user, they play around with it, they try out a feature, they say, hey, I don't like that, you just remove it, and say, hey, can you change it this way? You just change it. And then once you have an app that is mostly there and kind of functions the way you like, I take that as a base or a guide and rewrite the code base from scratch to build out those features in an intelligent way. So that I found to be a very, very effective workflow. That's only one half of, to me, this kind of AI code assisted tools. The other category is really AI code assist. So there's tools like Cursor and Windsurf that are, and even VS Code has one now, Copilot, where they're integrated right into your coding development application. It's called IDE, which is where you actually go and you sit and you write code. And right along in a sidebar there is just an agent that has access to your code base that you can ask questions. And it can write functions for you. It can do line complete or even full function complete right as you're writing. It can recommend changes and edits. That kind of tool is a must for any development environment because it just means you can write code faster. You can debug errors faster. You don't need to copy and paste something into Google and look up the error. You can just ask, hey, Claude, what's going on with this error? What's happening? And it can tell you right immediately. You don't even need to leave your IDE. What's really important with this kind of development, though, is to make sure that the developer still understands every line of code that is written. Because if not, you're going to get into those same tech debt problems that you did in the first case we discussed, where the developer doesn't know what's going on. They're relying on prompting to solve their problems. And that is just really, really tough. The time it takes to do that far outpaces the time it takes to put this understanding up front.
That's interesting. And what would you recommend then to make sure that the engineers, the people do understand the code that when they write that is code generated, I would say? Is there anything that you would recommend?
It's tough. It's a tough one. At the end of the day, you have to trust your developers to do the right thing. I think a lot of this comes down to, company attitude comes from the top. As a business leader, you need to be setting the expectation of how these developers write code. You need to crack down when you have a developer who's just prompting code and can't explain something to their senior developer. You need to crack down and say, this is not okay. You need to go redo this. Setting those expectations, setting those guidelines, teaching your employees how to use AI is really important. A lot of companies, especially bigger orgs, are just providing these tools to their employees and letting them do whatever they want. There's not really guidelines set up. There's not training set up. So getting a company culture of doing things the right way is really important.
And that goes beyond AI. I mean, AI or no AI, that mindset has to be in place anyway in the first place. It's like peer reviews. I know that a lot of teams don't even do peer reviews. Maybe AI can help a little bit on that. I think can help with determining whether the code will perform as expected or will scale as expected. For instance, that could be a good use of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have AI that just reads every time you submit a pull request. It'll read through all of the pull request changes, put comments right in the PR on GitHub that developers can then go and just look at the comments and see what the AI had to say.
But you mentioned security earlier, and I completely agree with you that pure reliance on AI for security would be a big no-no for me.
I completely agree. Completely agree. There are some applications where security is not important that I've worked on. But if you care at all about data privacy, code privacy, security, you need to be very careful about what tools you're using.
What tools you use, what is shared on the internet, etc. And then something that most people don't know is that those tools or those AI agents, they rely on data that could be several months old, which explains why sometimes they will recommend a library that is deprecated, for instance, because it doesn't know any better, doesn't know what the latest is. So you could end up in a situation where you would spend more time with a dependency that you would otherwise manually.
Yeah, Olivia, you've hit on one of the biggest issues with this AI code assist that I have personally encountered, and I use these tools quite a bit in my everyday work. Fortunately, people are starting to figure this out. Remember, these tools are very new. Cursor only became popular maybe this year, maybe late last year, and that is the biggest coding assisted tool. So this is still a very new space and new technology that people are figuring out. For example, one way people are starting to get around this is via MCP, which is a protocol that allows these language models to use tools, and a tool can basically be anything. So in this case, the tool is a registration of modern libraries and packages that you can set up before you start using the tool. Say, I know I want to use these packages, go pull down the latest repo, index that alongside my code base, and then reference that as we're building. So there are ways, if you're smart about using these tools, to get around that kind of stuff, but it's not easy and seamless. It takes a little bit of work to do that kind of stuff. So we're moving the trajectory where these tools are getting a lot better and a lot cleaner, a lot easier to use. It certainly still takes experience to be able to get the most out of these.
Hey, Jack, I want to stick on the topic of AI within software development. AI feels new to a lot of people, and a software development team who incorporated AI within their development a few years ago might have been on the cutting edge of the technology side of things. However, there's somewhat of an expectation that software development teams are using AI today. So I'm interested to hear, what is the baseline expectation for how software development teams should be utilizing AI? And then looking forward, what could we potentially expect from their usage of AI in the next few years?
That's a really good question. And the answer, unfortunately, I don't know if I'm going to be able to give a really clear, specific answer to this, but I'll do my best. Expectations vary widely right now. Larger enterprise organizations have been slower to adopt this technology, opting for safety in terms of data privacy, security, and that kind of stuff. But that comes at the cost of using older tools. So you're not always going to be up to date with the latest and greatest in terms of these AI coding assist tools. There's also trouble with these larger organizations to adjust company culture. You have so many employees that you need to educate and reach and teach how to use these tools appropriately. You get a really wide variety of usage patterns and usage amount of these tools within the organization. Smaller companies are tending to use this technology a lot more. They are running with it just because it allows you to push releases and develop so much faster. For example, I personally, since using AI coding tools, I remember initially when Copilot for VS Code came out, and I thought it was the best thing ever. This was maybe a year or so ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And we used it, and I would say anecdotally, I would get maybe a 30 to 50% speed up in writing code. And I remember even reading a paper at the time that had done a study of software engineers that confirmed that gut feeling of mine. It was really about 30 to 50%. Modern tools blow that out of the water. I can write code 3 to 5 times as fast now. What's really important to keep in mind, senior developers get a lot more benefit out of these tools than junior developers. People who know how to structure code, know how to prompt these models, know what is a good way to do things and what is a bad way to do things, can catch the models, correct them, prompt them better, build better tools, and build faster. Junior developers, it's very interesting. There's a lot of studies coming out right now about brain rot at the AI usage, where developers are relying too much on AI to do work, and they're not developing those skills to think for themselves about how to code and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting and developing field. And unfortunately, I don't know if there's like a really clear consensus out there. In terms of where these tools are going, they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. If you are a software development company and you're not using them, you are going to get left behind in the next year or two. Your competition is going to be using them, and they're going to be able to work 3 to 5 times as fast as you with the same staff, same costs. So, if you haven't started using these tools, start now. I don't think it's too late, but it will be in a couple of years.
Yeah, there's still the problem of garbage in, garbage out. So you could do it 4 or 5 times faster than anybody else. But if you don't have the right product in mind in the first place, or the right processes to go from ideation to production, quite frankly, you can produce code. It won't make any difference, quite frankly.
That is a very good point. When I said 3 to 5 times faster, I'm what I mean is without a drop in quality.
No,
Code.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So what the impact there? Two things you can do about that. First, like I said before, senior developers get a lot more out of this tool than junior developers.
Absolutely.
It might even be worthwhile at your company to start a policy where junior developers aren't using AI tools for the first year of them being there. They have to write stuff by themselves, and then once they've learned the code base, learned the product, learned how to develop, then they can start using these AI tools, and you get that speed up. It's more of an investment in your future as opposed to seeing immediate value. And the second thing, which I haven't seen a lot of people talking about, but is an opinion that I hold, DevOps engineers are going to become increasingly valued. Being able to do things like CI/CD and have these integration flywheels to be able to push faster releases of code without things breaking, being able to set infrastructure up for scale rapidly. As development becomes more rapid, the systems supporting that development need to keep up. And that's kind of where these DevOps engineers come in. So I always, when I work on projects, I have a couple of really strong DevOps people that I try to pull in at the very least for a consult, if not for, real work on the project. And I think skills like that are going to become increasingly valuable.
Jack, you talked about some of these enterprise companies who may not be introducing AI as quickly. And then, the expectation that some of the smaller companies need to have AI within their software development lifecycle as it stands. For a company wanting to dive into AI, specifically maybe the smaller to mid-sized companies, what advice would you give on how they could foster an environment where complex AI development can scale efficiently while maintaining agility and code quality, especially when integrating some of these new technologies that you said we can be expecting for years to come?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough problem. AI or companies that want to start using AI, I think number one, start trying it, right? The leadership team should be the first ones to try using it, and they should do a real assessment of the value. Understanding that they're not going to get as much value out of these tools as an expert in AI would, but they can still play around with them, see how they kind of work, get a feel for the value that they add, and then make a decision how and where to incorporate them. I think consulting experts in AI is a really important step. Like I said, having a strong understanding of the capabilities of these tools is really important. I also think building the code. So a lot of issues that come on later down the line when you're trying to scale a code base, add new features, improve upon an existing product. A lot of the biggest issues with that kind of work are actually have to do with how the code was formulated at the start. So I think now that development is getting, the development cycle is becoming faster, taking extra time at the beginning to be really thoughtful about your package design in order to allow it to scale and grow is going to be really important. So designing things in a modular way, making systems isolated so you can just deal with one small part of the code base at a time. These kind of things were always good coding practices, but they matter a lot more now because having a strong design with scale built in mind from day one is going to allow you to take full advantage of the scale and speed that AI can deliver in terms of your production development. So that would be kind of my advice in that area.
So, when companies are looking to try out AI, obviously it's not only the software that they select, it's not only how they train their people to use it, but it's making sure that they are getting that value. So earlier in the conversation, you mentioned monitoring the AI software that's implemented, and then really understanding what efficiencies are being gained. Can you talk about how you look to monitor those efficiencies and what sort of checkups you set up in order to make sure that the software that's selected is being effective?
Data is gold. Us folks who have been in AI and data science for a while have always been saying this. Olivier, you mentioned this before. Garbage in, garbage out is a classic saying among data scientists. You need good data to produce good models. Model validation and testing is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle right now. So formulating a good model and thinking about how it's going to be used in production before development is key. Because that way you can set up your model testing before you push anything into development in a way that is going to mimic real tool usage. So that's number one, making sure you do a really good job assessing and validating the tool before you push anything to the user to make sure the model will perform for others the way you've theorized it will. In terms of monitoring, it's extremely important. You should be logging everything. You should have separate logs, separate data repositories, user accounts. You want to pull as much data out of this tool as possible, not just for logging purposes, but the more data you have on how people are using the tool, the easier it will be to improve that tool. And that's through additional, fine tuning and model training. As you start using the tool, the way AI works, the way AI should be set up in theory is the more you use the tool, the better the tool gets. So having all of that monitoring is important, not just for monitoring, but also for improvement. So having a good monitoring system set up is vital. Checking in on it is important. You should have somebody, if you're a larger company, you should have somebody who has just their job is dedicated into managing AI tools. It's their job to make sure the tools stay up, to watch how people use the tools, check in every week or 2 weeks, monitor usage, look through some of the queries people are putting in and how they're using the tool and what kind of responses is outputting. And if you're a smaller company, even just have someone doing that part-time, check in on your model, have one person and say, it's your job, check in on this model once a month, make a checklist of the things they should do. Look at usage over time, check 50 individual queries and responses, interview 2 users about their how well they've used the tool. Having this kind of just general tool use monitoring is going to be really important. The other important piece I want to talk about in terms of long-term tool usage, and this goes back to building with scale in mind from day one. Whatever you're building now, if it's on top of these LLMs and Gen AI applications specifically, needs to be built in a modular way where in a few months, when the next big LLM comes out from whatever provider that may be, Google, Claude, OpenAI, somebody else, you need to be able to take that model, stick it in your code, stick it in your product, and immediately see the gains. Because that is the power. This is not a static field. This is a very dynamic field, and these models are improving every day. So having a tool that is agnostic to the LLM provider, and you can easily swap in new LLMs is very important. And people are starting to recognize that. There's a lot of packages coming out recently that allow that to be a lot easier. So, yeah, just a few answers there.
I'm just curious to know if you've seen AI models over time drifting, meaning that, okay, they had a certain function, certain understanding of what they were supposed to do. And because I'm picking on this monitoring issue here, which is a lot more important than people might think, especially with AI. AI having its a mind of its own, if I may say so, could drift to unknown territories that we don't want to be in, right? So have you seen this case before?
There's 2 cases I want to talk about. That's an excellent point. The first I'll address is what you said, model drift. Models don't necessarily drift. Once you've trained a model, that's kind of how it works, unless you implement memory into it, which you can do through a RAG or through long-term. There's a bunch of ways to do memory. And then it will adapt and change as you use it. But in theory, these models should remain static. In theory. In practice, this is not true because companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are pushing silent updates to their models very regularly, at least once a month. Usually, they're pushing updates that are just small tweaks, but they can make a difference. And then, especially when you move to a new major release, that can be very different. Your prompts can respond differently. The model may act differently. So you should, as part of your monitoring, have a set of test queries, a set of test data that you just have on the side. And once a month or so, run that through your model, log the responses, and evaluate. You can set up an automated evaluation with like a LLM as a judge. There's a lot of ways to do evaluation. But set up an evaluation so that you compare how the model is answering these test questions today versus how they answered a month ago versus 6 months ago. And whenever a new major release comes out, test that first before you push it into production. That way, you shouldn't really hit any surprises from this model drift aspect. Yeah, the second important piece, though, is the more traditional answer to the question. Models, in theory, don't drift. Once you train a model, it's static. You should be getting the same responses from it, more or less. Big caveats there, but let's accept that as true for these more classical machine learning algorithms. Data drifts over time. So your model, you could train a classical ML model, for example, to make a prediction based off of a set of data. And the model can remain static and work well. And you can have a test set and it'll respond the same to the test set today, 6 months from now, 3 years from now. But the underlying data that you're processing in a production environment will change over time. It's just human nature. Data is derived from people. People change over time. Trends change over time. Society changes over time. And even an interesting point is good models will actually change the data. I've had patterns where with some of these medical models where, we put this into a doctor's workflow that, help the doctors make recommendations about patients based on the model. And that will change the patients they see, how those patients, how they live their lives, how that kind of prevalence of that stuff or disease or whatever we're predicting is in the community. And so by using the model, you change the data itself. Data can also change from external factors. I've had, again, in healthcare, laws come out that change how Medicare billing works. And based on how the billing works, changes doctors' recommendations for what types of procedures and solutions and things should happen. So recommendations that would have been sound and made a lot of sense yesterday, a new regulation passes today, tomorrow, those might be totally wrong. So being aware of data drift is very important. The way you do that is very similar to what we talked about for model drift. But instead of having a static test set that you're testing against changing models, you have a changing test set. So every month or so, you pull in a set of new data from your testing environment, you look through it manually, and then you put it through the model and see what the model outputs look like. And if the distribution of model outputs has changed, or the rate of a particular variable has changed, you can do a variable analysis to see how the variables look in the new data versus the old data, and just monitor that kind of data drift is also very important. Although maybe more important for more traditional machine learning and deep learning applications versus this newer LLM-based Gen AI stuff.
Really interesting, Jack. This has been a great conversation, and I just want to wrap up with one question. As all technology leaders are looking for what's next, or what are the signals for change. And so, my final question would be, what indicators should leaders be looking for within AI or the industry that they're working in that lets them know it's time for them to reevaluate their AI strategy?
Well, it's a good question and really tough because it's hard to know what's coming next. These things are changing so rapidly, and I am seeing new things every day. And not all of them surprise me, but some of them do. So I think having your ear to the ground, being aware of changes in the AI community. There's newsletters you can follow. Alpha Signal is one of my favorite that just does a quick bullet point recap of top AI news. I also have a newsletter from Tidal AI that you can go and subscribe to if you want. Shameless plug. Um, But staying aware of the AI environment and specifically how that relates to your business is important, and will affect your decisions moving forward. So don't stick your head in the ground. Don't think that just because you have an AI model built for your organization that you're done. Staying on top of changes in technology is important, and adapting to them is important. And to close out here, if you're not using AI as a business right now, start looking into it, because I guarantee you your competitors are. We are in a phase right now where AI adoption is starting to become commonplace. For the past maybe 6 months to a year, I've seen businesses go from, oh, that's kind of interesting, to now actually integrating it into their business workflows and seeing value. You're still at a point where it's not too late, right? It's not too late to implement AI and get a serious competitive advantage over your other competitors. But in 5 years, it will be. 3 to 5 years from now, having AI is going to be a requirement as opposed to an advantage. Just like how people used to say on their resumes, they used to put proficient in Microsoft Word. And that was looked at as a big skill. I know Microsoft Word. I can type stuff up really fast. You should hire me because of that. If you put proficient in Microsoft Word on your resume now, you're going to be laughed out of the interview. People are going to say that's totally irrelevant. We assume you're using Microsoft Word. If you're not, what the heck are you doing? And with a lot of these AI tools, it's going to be exactly the same way in 5 years from now. Knowing it and using it will be the baseline, and it will not be a competitive advantage anymore. You will just need to be doing it, or you will not be a company. Now is the time to really get that advantage and surge ahead.
And it's true not just for software engineers, but also for product managers, architects, testers, DevOps. You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
All those
Customer service representatives.
Service representative. Yeah, absolutely. Technical support, customer service, this type, so it's not just one, because traditionally we're always saying, oh, software engineers, are the first ones and they should be the only ones or whatever. It's not true. Not anymore anyway.
No, AI can really impact every aspect of a business in a
Yeah.
major way nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights on AI and ML leadership, innovation applications in healthcare and beyond, and the practicalities of driving AI for business value were incredibly insightful and valuable. To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Software Without Borders. If you're interested in learning more about AI strategy, machine learning development, or leveraging cutting AI technologies for business impact, be sure to subscribe to our show and leave a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform.